What's up, everyone, and welcome to this week's Cybersecurity Weekly, where we review the security events that happened in the last week. I'm feeling a little bit under the weather, so just bear with me. You might hear it in my voice. As always, I have broken the stories down in the timeline, and there's a list of the stories with time markers in the description below. So you can click on any of those time markers to jump around to any story you want. If you find my work valuable, of course, I ask you to hit the like button and share this episode with anyone you know who can benefit from this information. If you have not already, please also consider subscribing to my channel.
Oh, drat these computers. They're so naughty and so complex. I could pinch them.
We start off today with patches. Citrix fixed a critical vulnerability in Citrix Application Delivery Management, known as ADM, tracked to CVE 2022-27511 that can be exploited by attackers to reset admin passwords. Citrix Application Delivery Management is a comprehensive platform that enables automation, orchestration, management, and analytics for application delivery across hybrid multi-cloud environments. The flaw is an improper access control issue reported by the security researcher Florian Hauser from Code White. Corruption of the system by a remote, unauthenticated user. The impact of this can include the reset of the administrator password at the next device reboot, allowing an attacker with SSH access to connect with the default administrator credentials after the device has rebooted, reads the advisory published by the IT giant. The flaw impacts all supported versions of Citrix Application Delivery Management Server. Citrix recommends customers update their installs of Citrix ADM Server and Citrix ADM Agent as soon as possible. The affected builds are Citrix ADM 13.1 before 13.1-21.53 and Citrix ADM 13 before 13.0-85.19. Customers must upgrade both Citrix ADM Server and all associated Citrix ADM agents. Please see the product documentation for assistance with upgrading the Citrix ADM Server and Citrix ADM agents. Customers that cannot immediately address the issue with the security patches are recommended that network traffic to the Citrix ADM's IP address is segmented, either physically or logically, from standard network traffic. The IT giant also fixed an improper control of a resource through its lifetime tracking as tracked as CVE 2022-27512. Successful exploitation of this flaw could cause a temporary disruption of the ADM license service. We now move on to attacks, vulnerabilities, and updates. A group of academics at the University of Hamburg, Germany, demonstrated that it is possible to use Wi-Fi connection probe requests to identify and track devices and thereby their users. Mobile devices transmit probe requests to receive information about nearby Wi-Fi networks and establish a Wi-Fi connection. An access point receiving a probe request replies with a probe response, thereby establishing a connection between both devices. However, probe requests can contain identifying information about the device owner depending on the age of the device and its operating system. For example, a request can contain the preferred network list, which includes networks identified by their so-called Service Set Identifier, SSIDs. Experts explain that 23% of the probe requests contain SSIDs of networks and devices were connected to in the past. The Boffins conducted a field experiment and captured a huge quantity of Wi-Fi probe requests and analyzed the type of data transmitted without the knowledge of the device owners. Probe requests are also used to track devices in stores or cities. They can be used to trilaterate the location of a device with an accuracy of up to 1.5 meters. The researchers conducted a field experiment in a German city where they captured probe requests of passersby and analyzed their content for 3 hours with a focus on SSIDs and identifying information. They captured a total of 252,242 probe requests, 116,961, or roughly 46.4%, were in the 2.4 gigahertz spectrum, of which 28,836 contained at least one SSID. In the 5 gigahertz spectrum, the experts recorded 135,281 probes, 53.6%, of which 29,653 contained an SSID. We conjecture that a lot of the SSIDs in our record originate from users trying to set up a network connection manually by entering both SSID and password through the advanced network settings and apparently, mistakenly, entering the wrong strings as the SSIDs, reads the research paper. A small but significant amount of probe requests containing SSIDs potentially broadcast passwords in the SSID field. We identified that 11.8% of the transmitted probe requests contain numeric strings with 16 digits or more, which are likely the initial passwords of popular German home routers, like Fritzbox or Telekom Home Router. The captured SSIDs also included strings corresponding to store Wi-Fi networks. The experts identified 106 distinct first and last names, 3 email addresses, and 92 distinct holiday homes or accommodations previously added as trusty networks. These sensitive strings were broadcast up to thousands of times during the 3 hours of the experiment. Experts explained that MAC address randomization could prevent tracking of the user, such as the reduction randomizations of information in the probe requests. The experts recommend users remove SSIDs that they no longer use, disable auto-join networks, and silence probe requests. This latter measure has some drawbacks, such as increasing the battery consumption and increasing the time to establish a connection. Probe requests are plainly observable to everyone around a sending device. Since they can contain sensitive data, they should be sent more carefully and with privacy in mind, concludes the paper. The HelloXD Ransomware first appeared in the threat landscape on November 30th, 2021. It borrows the code from Backdoor Ransomware, which is available in the Russian-speaking hacking forum since September 2021. Unlike other ransomware operations, this ransomware gang doesn't use a leak site. Instead, it contacts victims through Tox chat and Onion-based messenger instances. The malware could target both Windows and Linux systems. In the recent attacks observed by security experts at Palo Alto Unit 42 team, the operators employed the open source backdoor MicroBackdoor to maintain persistence on infected hosts. The backdoor allows the attacker to browse the file system, upload and download files, execute commands, and also remove itself from the infected system. The analysis of the MicroBackdoor sample revealed an embedded IP address in the configuration. The IP belongs to a threat actor that is likely the developer, X4K, aka Lucky Guy, Unknown, Uncow, Unknown with an underscore and a 0, and X4K me. The ransom note was modified between the observed samples. In the first sample that was encountered, the ransom note only linked to a Tox ID, whereas a latter observed sample links to an Onion domain as well as a Tox ID, different from the one in the first version. At the time of writing, the site is down, reads the analysis published by Palo Alto Networks. The researchers discovered that the operators used 2 main packers for HelloXD ransomware binaries, a modified version of UPX, and a second packer consisting of 2 layers, with the second being the same custom UPX packer. Unit 42 researchers have observed 2 different samples of the HelloXD ransomware publicly available, a circumstance that suggests the malware is still under development. The first sample is quite rudimentary, with minimal obfuscation and typically paired with an obfuscated loader response for decrypting it through the use of the WinCrypt API before injecting it into memory. Second sample, analyzed by the researchers, is more obfuscated and is executed in memory by a packer instead of a loader. Both samples implement similar functionalities because they borrow the same leaked Babak source code. Unit 42 research encountered HelloXD, a ransomware family, in its initial stages, but already intending to impact organizations. While the ransomware functionality is nothing new, during our research following the lines, we found out the ransomware is most likely developed by a threat actor named X4K. This threat actor is well known on various hacking forums and seems to be of Russian origin, concludes the analysis published by Unit 42. Unit 42 was able to uncover additional X4K activity being linked to malicious infrastructure and additional malware besides the initial ransomware sample going back to 2020. China-linked GALLIUM APT, aka SoftCell, used a previously undocumented remote access Trojan dubbed PingPull in recent attacks aimed at organizations in Southeast Asia, Europe, and Africa. Researchers from Palo Alto Networks define the PingPull RAT as a difficult-to-detect backdoor that leverages the Internet Control Messaging Protocol, or ICMP, for command and control communications. Experts also found PingPull variants that use HTTPS and TCP for command and control communications instead of ICMP. The activity of the apt group was first reported by Microsoft in December 2019 when the Microsoft Threat Intelligence Center warned of the GALLIUM threat group targeting global telecommunication providers worldwide. However, the group has been active since at least 2012. Since 2021, the cyber espionage group started targeting financial institutions and government entities in Afghanistan, Australia, Belgium, Cambodia, Malaysia, Mozambique, the Philippines, Russia, and Vietnam. Unlike past attacks, the group started using the PingPull RAT. The PingPull Trojan, or RAT, is written in Visual C++. It was used by threat actors to access a reverse shell and run arbitrary commands on compromised systems. PingPull samples that use ICMP for command and control communications issue ICMP echo request packets to the command and control server. The command and control server will reply to these echo requests with an echo reply packet to issue commands to the system, reads the analysis published by Palo Alto Networks. Continuing this method of pivoting across all of the PingPull samples and their associated command and control domains has resulted in identification of over 170 IP addresses associated with this group dating back to late 2020. The researchers pointed out that Gallium is an active threat to telecommunications, finance, and government organizations across Southeast Asia, Europe, and Africa. The group is improving its cyber espionage capabilities. Ukraine's Computer Emergency Response Team is warning that the Russia-linked Sandworm app may be exploiting the recently discovered Follina RCE. The issue, tracked to CVE 2022-30190, impacts the Microsoft Windows Support Diagnostic Tool. Nation-state actors are targeting media organizations in Ukraine, including radio stations and newspapers. The mole spam messages use the topic list of links to interactive maps. According to the CERT UA, more malicious emails reached more than 500 recipients. The mole spam messages use the, again, weaponized document list of links in interactive maps.doc. Upon opening the document, it'll load the HTML file and execute JavaScript code, which in turn will download and execute the exe file 2.txt, which is detected as malicious Crescent LMP. Attackers continue to exploit vulnerabilities CVE 2022-30190 and are increasingly resorting to emails from compromised government emails, reads the alert published by the Ukraine CERT. The government experts tracked the activity to UAC 0113, which is a threat actor that with a medium level of confidence is associated with the Sandworm apt group. Researchers from antivirus firm Avast spotted a new Linux rootkit dubbed Syslogk that uses specially crafted magic packets to activate a dormant backdoor on the device. The experts reported that the Syslogk rootkit is heavily based on an open source, well-known kernel out rootkit for Linux dubbed AdorNG. Experts highlighted that the kernel rootkit is hard to detect. It enables hiding processes, files, and even the kernel module. The experts pointed out that it also allows authenticated user mode processes to interact with the rootkit to control it. Linux rootkits are malware installed as kernel modules in the operating system. Once installed, they intercept legitimate Linux commands to filter out information that they do not want to be displayed, such as the presence of files, folders, or processes. The rootkit has a hide module function, which uses the list_del or delete function of the kernel API to remove the module from the linked list of kernel modules. Next, it also accordingly updates its internal module_hidden flag, reads the analysis published by Avast. However, the researchers explained that the rootkit has a functionality implemented in the proc_write function that exposes an interface in the /proc file system, which could be used as an indicator of compromise when the value 1 is written into the file /proc/syslogk. Upon discovering the rootkit, it is possible to remove it from the memory using the rmmod linux command. Syslogk is also able to hide the malicious payload by taking the following actions. The hk_proc_read_dir or redirectory function of the rootkit hides directories containing malicious files, effectively hiding them from the operating system itself. The malicious processes are hidden via hk_getpr, a mix of AdorNG functions for hiding processes. The malicious payload is hidden from tools like netstat. When running, it will not appear in the list of services. For this purpose, the rootkit uses the function hk_t4_seek_show. The malicious payload is not continuously running. The attacker remotely executes it on demand when a specially crafted TCP packet is sent to the infected machine, which inspects the traffic by installing a netfilter hook. It is also possible for the attacker to remotely stop the payload. This requires using a hard-coded key in the rootkit and knowledge of some fields of the magic packet used for Y-load. Avast researchers observed the Syslogk rootkit loading a Linux backdoor named Recube, which will be activated on the compromised system when the rootkit receives a magic packet from the operators. We observed that the Syslogk rootkit and Recube payload perfectly align when used covertly in conjunction with a fake SMTP server. Consider how stealthy this could be. A backdoor that does not load until some magic packets are sent to the machine. When queried, it appears to be a legitimate service hidden in memory, hidden on disk, remotely magically executed, hidden on the network, continues the analysis. Even if it is found during a network port scan, it still seems to be a legitimate SMTP server. Syslogk listens for specially crafted TCP packets that include special reserved field values. Source port numbering between 63,400 and 63,411 inclusive. Destination port and source address matches a hard-coded key. Experts believe that the Syslogk rootkit is under development and it will likely implement new features in the next versions. Researchers from Confiant have uncovered a sophisticated malware campaign tracked as SeaFlower, targeting Web3 wallet users. Chinese crooks are spreading backdoored versions of iOS and Android Web3 wallets to steal users' seed phrase. SeaFlower maintains the functionality of the original wallet, but it adds code to exfiltrate the seed phrase. The threat actors targeted the following Web3 wallets: Coinbase Wallet, MetaMask, Token Pocket, and IAM Token. SeaFlower is a cluster of activity that we identified earlier this year in March 2022. We believe SeaFlower is the most technically sophisticated threat targeting Web3 users, right after the infamous Lazarus Group, reads the analysis published by Confiant. SeaFlower drastically differs from the other Web3 intrusion sets we track, with little to no overlap from the infrastructure in place, but also from the technical capability and coordination point of view. Reverse engineering iOS and Android apps, modding them, provisioning, and automated deployments. The attacker set up fake cloned websites to distribute backdoored wallets that can be downloaded by users. The fake sites are promoted via search engine poisoning attacks, mainly targeting Baidu and other Chinese search engines. Experts didn't find a backdoored Chrome extension delivered from these cloned websites. All the links point to the real Chrome extension in the Chrome Web Store. Where iOS threat actors are using provisioned profiles, the tainted apps are sideloaded to the victim's phone and installed. The researchers reported at very early stages of this campaign, all the Apple developer IDs linked to these provisioning profiles. They were reported to Apple to allow the company to revoke them. Researchers from SonarSource have discovered a high-severity vulnerability impacting the Zimbra email suite tracked as CVE 2022-27924 with a CVS score of 7.5. That can be exploited by an unauthenticated attacker to steal login credentials of users without user interaction. Zimbra Collaboration, aka ZCS 8.8.15 and 9.0, allows an unauthenticated attacker to inject arbitrary memcache commands into a targeted instance. These memcache commands become unescaped, causing an overwrite of arbitrary cached entries, reads the advisory published by NIST. Once the login credentials are obtained, attackers can access victims' mailboxes and potentially escalate their access to targeted organizations. With mail access, attackers can reset passwords, impersonate their victims, and silently read all private conversations within the target company, reads the advisory published by SonarSource. Experts explain that Zimbra's reverse proxy makes an HTTP request to the Zimbra lookup service for every connection it receives, before forwarding the traffic to the correct backend service. The result of an HTTP request is cached per user by a memcached instance to improve performance. This means that before making the HTTP request to the lookup service, the cache is checked for an existing route. If a cache entry exists, the lookup request is skipped. Memcache server stores key value pairs that can be set and retrieved with a simple text-based protocol. The root cause of the memcache injection vulnerability in Zimbra is that new line characters are not escaped in untrusted user input. The researchers published a video proof of concept that demonstrates how an unauthenticated attacker can steal a password of a known user of a targeted instance. The vulnerability is triggered the next time the victim uses a mail client to connect to the Zimbra server of a target organization. Threat actors, which know the victim's email addresses, can override an entry in the cache to forward all IMAP traffic to an attacker-controlled server, including the clear text credentials of a target user. The first strategy requires the attacker to know the email address of victims to be able to steal their login credentials, continues the analysis. Typically, an organization uses a pattern for email addresses for their members, such as, firstname.lastname@example.com. Now, a list of email addresses could be obtained from OSINT sources such as LinkedIn. In an alternative attack scenario, attackers exploit response smuggling to bypass the restrictions imposed by the first strategy and steal clear text credentials from any vulnerable Zimbra instance. The response smuggling technique consists of manipulating and injecting malicious content in the form of a secret unauthorized HTTP response into a single HTTP response from a vulnerable or compromised backend HTTP agent, like a server. Attackers can steal users' credentials by smuggling unauthorized HTTP responses that abuse the CRLF injection flaw to forward IMAP traffic to a rogue server, even without the knowledge of their email addresses. Akamai security researchers discovered a new Golang-based P2P botnet, tracked as Panchan, that is targeting Linux servers that has been active since March 2022. Panchan uses basic SSH dictionary attack to implement wormable behavior. It also harvests SSH keys and uses them for lateral movement. The bot uses its built-in concurrency features to maximize spreadability and execute malware modules. The botnet is engaged in crypto mining activity. The malicious code has been designed to hijack the computer's resources to mine cryptocurrencies. The bot was observed using XMRig and NB-hash miners that aren't extracted to the disk to avoid detection. The malware deploys two miners, XMRig and NB-hash. Both miner binaries come base64 encoded inside the malware binary itself and are extracted and executed during runtime. There is some novelty to the execution, however, as the miners aren't extracted to the disk at all, reads the analysis published by the experts. To avoid detection and reduce traceability, the malware drops its crypto miners as memory-mapped files without any disk presence. It also kills the crypto miner processes if it detects any process monitoring. The researchers observed the malware implementing a God mode, an admin panel that operators use to edit the mining configuration, which is then distributed to all the nodes of the botnet. Threat actors were observed using a private key to access God mode in order to prevent unwanted tampering. The bot contains a public key associated with the above private key and is used to authenticate connections. The admin panel is written in Japanese, a circumstance that suggests the threat actors are likely of Japanese origin. The experts performed reverse engineering of the bot. They were also able to develop a script to map the botnet and extract the full list of injected machines. At the time of the analysis, the researchers discovered 209 peers, 40 of which are currently active. Most of the infections are in Asia, followed by Europe, North America, South America, Africa, and Oceania. Once the system is infected, the bot starts an HTTPS post operation to a Discord webhook, which operators likely use for victim monitoring. In order to achieve persistence, the malware copies itself to bin/systemd-worker and creates a systemd service with the same name. Experts pointed out that operators are likely mimicking legitimate systemd services to avoid detections. Researchers from the University of Texas, University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign, and the University of Washington devised a new side-channel attack technique dubbed Hertzbleed that could allow remote attackers to steal encryption keys from modern Intel and AMD chips. Hertzbleed is a new family of side-channel attacks, frequency side channels. In the worst case, these attacks can allow an attacker to extract cryptographic keys from remote servers that were previously believed to be secure, reads the website set up to describe the attack. The experts will present their findings at the 31st Usenix Security Symposium that'll take place in Boston the 10th to the 12th of August 2022. The principle behind the Hertzbleed attack is that under certain circumstances, the dynamic frequency scaling of modern x86 processors depends on the data being processed. First, Hertzbleed shows that on modern x86 CPUs, power side channel attacks can be turned into even remote timing attacks, lifting the need for any power measurement interface. The cause is that under certain circumstances, periodic CPU frequency adjustments depend on the current CPU power consumption. And these adjustments directly translate to execution time differences, as 1 Hz equals 1 cycle per second, continues the post. Second, Hertzbleed shows that even when implemented correctly as constant time, cryptographic code can still leak via remote timing analysis. The result is that current industry guidelines for how to write constant time code, such as Intel's one, are insufficient to guarantee constant time execution on modern processors. The issue is tracked as CVE 2022-23823 on AMD and CVE 2022-24436 on Intel. At this time, there is no fix for the issue. Experts pointed out that the Hertzbleed is not a bug. The cause of the issue is dynamic frequency scaling, which is a feature implemented in modern processors to reduce power consumption during low CPU loads. The experts shared their findings, along with proof of concept code to Intel, Cloudflare, and Microsoft in the third quarter of 2021, and then to AMD in the first quarter of 2022. At this time, Intel and AMD don't plan to release microcode to mitigate the Hertzbleed attack. Intel provided guidance to mitigate the attack by hardening their libraries and applications. Now, is there a workaround? Technically, yes. However, it has a significant system-wide performance impact, concludes the experts. In most cases, a workload-independent workaround to mitigate Hertzbleed is to disable frequency boost. Intel calls this feature Turbo Boost, and AMD calls it Turbo Core or Precision Boost. Disabling frequency boost can be done either through the BIOS or at runtime via the frequency scaling driver. In the experiments of the experts, when frequency boost was disabled, the frequency stayed fixed at the base frequency during workload execution, preventing leakage via Hertzbleed. However, this is not a recommended mitigation strategy as it will significantly impact performance. An investigation conducted by the antivirus firm Dr. Web in May resulted in the discovery of multiple adware and information stealing malware on the official Google Play Store. However, the experts warn that info-stealing Trojans are the most dangerous threats for Android users. They could be used to steal sensitive data, such as login credentials and authorization for multiple services online. The principal trends that emerged from the Dr. Web report is the decreased activity of the Android.spy.4498 Trojan, while the activity of adware Trojans increased. The Android.spy.4498 is a Trojan that allows operators to steal the contents of other apps, notifications, download other apps, and prompt users to install them. The most common unwanted program discovered by the researchers is program.fakeantivirus.1. It's an adware that masquerades as antivirus software. These apps inform users of non-existent threats, deceive them, and ask the victims to purchase the software's full version. In May, Dr. Web specialists discovered a large number of threats on Google Play. The adware Trojans Android.hiddenads.3158 and Android.hiddenads.3161 were among them, reads the report published by Dark Web. Researchers discovered 5 malicious apps in the Google Play Store that totaled 2 million downloads. This Pick camera photo editor, an image editing software with 1 million downloads, wild and exotic animal wallpaper, an image collection app with 500,000 downloads, Zodi horoscope fortune finder, an astrology-related software with 500,000 downloads, Pip Camera 2022, an image editing software with 50,000 downloads, Magnifier Flashlight, a flashlight application with 10,000 downloads. Cybersecurity researchers from JFrog disclosed details of a now-patched, high-severity security vulnerability in the popular Fastjson library that could be potentially exploited to achieve remote code execution. Fastjson is a Java library that can be used to convert Java objects into their JSON representation. It can also be used to convert a JSON string to an equivalent Java object. Fastjson can work with arbitrary Java objects, including pre-existing objects that you do not have source code of. The flaw tracked to CVE 2022-25845 with a CVS score of 8.1 resides in a feature called autotype and is related to the deserialization of untrusted data. The autotype function allows specifying a custom type when parsing a JSON input that can then be deserialized into an object of a specified class. This vulnerability allows an attacker to bypass the autotype check mechanism in Fastjson and achieve remote code execution, reads the analysis published by JFrog's Yuria Yavnieli. The impact of this flaw is huge. It affects all Java applications that rely on Fastjson versions 1.2.80 or earlier, and that pass user-controlled data to either the JSON.parse or JSON.parse objects APIs without specifying a specific class to deserialize. The experts pointed out that almost 5,000 Maven projects alone rely on Fastjson. The vulnerability was addressed with the release of version 1.2.83 on May 23, 2022. Initially, the issue was addressed by the development team by introducing a safe mode that disables autotype and implementing a block list of classes to defend against deserialization issues. Fortunately, experts discovered how to bypass these restrictions to achieve remote code execution, forcing the development team to introduce no fixes. To conclude, we assess that currently this vulnerability does not seem to pose a high threat, although a public proof of concept exploit exists and the potential impact is very high. Getting remote code execution. The conditions for the attack are not trivial, passing untrusted input to specific vulnerable APIs, and most importantly, target-specific research is required to find a suitable gadget class to exploit, which will probably not exist at all due to its unlikely attributes. And that's according to, again, Yavnieli in her report. Alpha, aka BlackCat Ransomware Group, has adopted a new strategy to force victims into paying the ransom. The gang began publishing victims' data on the clear web to increase the pressure. Publishing data online will make data indexable by search engines, increasing the potential impact on the victims due to the public availability of the stolen data. The Alpha BlackCat gang has been active since at least December 2021, when malware researchers from Recorded Future and Malware Hunter team discovered their operation. The BlackCat group is the first professional ransomware strain that was written in the Rust programming language. BlackCat can target Windows, Linux, and VMware ESXi systems, but at this time, the number of victims is limited. The popular malware researcher Michael Gillespie said that the BlackCat ransomware is very sophisticated. Recorded Future experts speculate that the author of the BlackCat ransomware, known as Alpha, was previously involved with the R-Evil ransomware operations. Alpha has been advertising the BlackCat ransomware as a service on the cybercrime forums XSS and Exploit since early December. Like other ransomware groups, the gang also implements a double extortion model, threatening to leak the stolen data if the victims don't pay. In the past, many victims of past ransomware attacks were not concerned about the publication of their data on a leak site in the Tor network, believing that dark nets are not easy to access to the masses. The ransomware gangs set up a website on the clear web for each victims and publish the stolen data on it. It's unclear if Alpha plans to pursue this approach with every victim, but other recent victims of the crime group include a school district and a U.S. city. Most likely, this is a test run to see if it improves results. Again with BlackCat. This time, Microsoft researchers have observed BlackCat ransomware gang targeting unpatched Exchange servers to compromise organizations worldwide. The compromise of Exchange servers allows threat actors to access the target networks, perform internal reconnaissance and lateral movement activities, and steal sensitive documents before encrypting them. For example, while the common entry vectors for these threat actors include remote desktop applications and compromised credentials, we also saw a threat actor leverage Exchange server vulnerabilities to gain target network access. In addition, at least 2 known affiliates are now adopting BlackCat Dev 0237, known for previously deploying Ryuk, Conti, and Hive, and Dev 0504, also previously known for deploying Ryuk, Rebel, Black Matter, and Conti. Reads the post published by Microsoft 365 Defender Threat Intelligence Team. In one of the attacks observed by Microsoft, threat actors started lateral movements 2.5 days after the initial compromise. The ransomware operators signed into one of the targeted devices discovered during their initial reconnaissance using compromised credentials via interactive sign-in. Then, they opted for a credential theft technique that didn't rely on tools like Mimikatz because they're easy to detect. The attackers created a dump file of the lsas.exe process via taskmanager.exe, saved the file to a zip archive. Then they continued to discover through the discovery phase using a PowerShell script version of AdRecon, which is a tool designed to gather extensive information about an Active Directory environment. When the attackers attempted to connect to devices using server message block and remote then the attackers attempted to connect to devices using server message block and remote desktop protocol. For discovered devices, the attackers attempted to navigate to various network shares and use the remote desktop client, or mstsc.exe, to sign into these devices, once again using the compromised account credentials. These behaviors continued for days, with the attackers signing into numerous devices throughout the organization, dumping credentials, and determining what devices they could access. BlackCat ransomware operators use both MegaSync and rclone for data exfiltration. They rename them as legitimate Windows processes, for example, winlogon.exe and mstsc.exe, to avoid raising suspicion. The ransomware payload is deployed 2 weeks from the initial compromise. Often the attackers distributed the payload using PS execute. This information is what we read from the previous article, so I'm not going to read it again. This is like, they've been around since December 2021. They're really cool. They target Windows, Linux, and VMware, and so on and so forth. We've heard all this before. So, researchers from Proofpoint reported that a feature in the Microsoft 365 suite could be abused to encrypt files stored on SharePoint and OneDrive. Proofpoint has discovered a potentially dangerous piece of functionality in Office 365 or Microsoft 365 that allows ransomware to encrypt files stored on SharePoint and OneDrive in a way that makes them unrecoverable without dedicated backups or a decryption key from the attacker, reads the post published by Proofpoint. The researchers detailed an attack chain that allows encrypting files in the compromised users' accounts. Unfortunately for the victims, these files can then only be retrieved by paying a ransom to receive the decryption keys. The researchers pointed out that the actions composing the attack chain can be automated using Microsoft APIs, command line interface scripts, and PowerShell scripts. Below, so they also listed the attack chain. which is initial access to gain access to one or more users' SharePoint Online or OneDrive accounts by compromising or hijacking users' identities. Then it goes into the account takeover and discovery. The attacker now has access to any file owned by the compromised user or controlled by the third-party OAuth application, which would include the user's OneDrive account as well. Then it goes into the collection and exfiltration to reduce versioning limit of files to a low number, such as 1, to keep it easy. Encrypt the file more times than that versioning limit you just changed to. With the example limit of 1, you encrypt the file twice. This step is unique to cloud ransomware compared to the attack chain for endpoint-based ransomware. In some cases, the attacker may exfiltrate the unencrypted files as part of a double extortion tactic. The monetization follows. Now all the original pre-attacker versions of the files are lost because you changed your version limits to 1 and they encrypted the file twice. So the only file that you have, so you only go back one version, the only file you have is the encrypted version. Now they go and get your money. So now all the original pre-attacker versions of the files are lost, leaving only the encrypted versions of each file in the cloud account. At this point, the attacker can ask for a ransom from the organization of whatever they want. The infection sequence can be carried out using a combination of Microsoft APIs, command line interface scripts, and PowerShell scripts, the enterprise security firm added. Researchers at Proofpoint reported that the attack abuses the autosave feature that creates cloud backups of older file versions when users edit a file stored on OneDrive or SharePoint Online. Every document library in SharePoint Online and OneDrive is characterized with a set of attributes, including the number of saved versions that can be changed by the site owner, and that can be changed regardless of their other roles. The versioning settings are under list settings for each document library. By design, when you reduce the document library version limit, any further changes to the files in the document library result in older versions becoming very hard to restore. There are two ways to abuse the versioning mechanism to achieve malicious aims, either by creating too many versions of a file by reducing the version limits of a document library, continues the report. Edits that increment a version of a file include changes to the document contents, file name, file metadata, and file encryption status. An attacker can either create too many versions of a file or reduce the version limit of a document library to a lower number, such as 1, and then encrypt each file more times than that versioning limit. Microsoft downplayed the issue, stating that older versions of files can be potentially recovered and restored for an additional 14 days with the assistance of Microsoft support. However, Proofpoint attempted to retrieve and restore old versions through that process, i.e. calling up Microsoft support, and they were unsuccessful. Secondly, even if the versioning settings configured workflow is as intended, Proofpoint has shown that it can be abused by attackers towards cloud ransomware aims. Lookout Threat Lab researchers uncovered enterprise-grade Android surveillance spyware named Hermit, used by the government of Kazakhstan to track individuals within the country. The latest samples of the spyware were detected by the researchers in April 2022, 4 months after a series of nationwide protests against government policies that were violently suppressed. According to Lookout, the Hermit spyware was likely developed by Italian surveillance vendor RCS Lab SPA and Tyke Lab SRL. The latter is telecommunications solutions company suspected of to be operating as a front company. The researchers reported that they observed the use of the Hermit spyware in other circumstances. In 2019, the spyware was used by the Italian authorities in an anti-corruption operation. Experts also uncovered an unknown actor that used the surveillance software in northeastern Syria. RCS Lab, a well-known lawful intercept company that officially only sells its products to law enforcement and intelligence agencies. Hermit is a sophisticated threat with a modular structure. It allows operators to take full control over the infected devices. The researchers obtained and analyzed 16 of the 25 known modules, each with unique capabilities. These modules, along with the permissions the core apps have, enable Hermit to exploit a rooted device, record audio, and make and redirect phone calls, as well as collect data such as call logs, contacts, photos, device location, and SMS messages, reads the analysis published by Lookout. We theorize that the spyware is distributed via SMS messages pretending to come from a legitimate source. The malware samples analyzed impersonated the applications of telecommunications companies or smartphone manufacturers. Hermit tricks users by serving up the legitimate web pages of the brands it impersonates as it kickstarts malicious activities in the background. The experts also added that all the samples they analyzed are Android versions of the spyware. However, they are aware of iOS versions of the spyware. The malware is likely distributed via, again, SMS messages that trick victims into installing apps masquerading as Samsung, Vivo, and Oppo apps. Upon opening the apps, the website of the impersonated company is opened while the infection process starts in the background. The report, published by Lookout, states that RCS Lab also has passed dealings with the Syrian authoritarian regime as part of its collaboration with the Berlin-based Advanced Germany Technology to sell surveillance solutions. According to leaked documents published in WikiLeaks in 2015, RCS Lab was a reseller of the notorious Italian surveillance firm Hacking Team. RCS Lab was providing its software to military and intelligence agencies in Pakistan, Chile, Mongolia, Bangladesh, Vietnam, Myanmar, and Turkmenistan. According to its own website, TykeLab provides innocuous technology solutions. However, the researchers found various publicly available clues that suggest otherwise. In addition to the Italian parliamentary document, they found several pieces of evidence tying TykeLab to RCS Lab, continues the report. For example, a current TykeLab employee's LinkedIn profile indicates that they also work at RCS Lab. In addition, the company offers services that require skills that may be useful in the development and delivery of surveillanceware, such as knowledge or interaction with telecommunications networks, social media analysis, SMS services, and mobile app development. One of the TykeLab's job postings for a security engineer they found spells out desired skills that would have direct application to surveillance of mobile networks and devices. The researchers also provided further evidence that links TykeLab to Hermit and RCS. They also published indicators of compromise for this threat. VULNERABILITIES researchers discovered that the zero-day vulnerability tracked to CVE 2022-1040 in Sophos Firewall was exploited by Chinese threat actors to compromise a company and cloud-hosted web service it was operating. The vulnerability was exploited by the Chinese attackers to drop a web shell into the target systems weeks before it was fixed by the security vendor. On March 25th, Sophos announced to have fixed the authentication bypass vulnerability tracked to CVE 2022-1040 that resides in the user portal and web admin areas of Sophos Firewall. The CVE 2022-1040 flaw received a CVSS score of 9.8 and impacts Sophos Firewall versions 18.5 MR3 and earlier. An authentication bypass vulnerability allowing remote code execution was discovered in the user portal and web admin of Sophos Firewall and responsibly disclosed to Sophos. It was reported via the Sophos Bug Bounty Program by an external security researcher. This vulnerability has been fixed, reads the advisory published by Sophos. A remote attacker with access to the firewall's user portal or web admin interface can exploit the flaw to bypass authentication and execute arbitrary code. A few days later, Sophos warned that the CVE 2022-1040 flaw is actively exploited in attacks aimed at a small set of Asian organizations. Sophos has observed this vulnerability being used to target a small set of specific organizations, primarily in the South Asia region. We have information each of these organizations directly. Sophos will provide further details as we continue to investigate, reads the advisory published by the vendor. Now, researchers from VULNERABILITIES revealed that a Chinese app group tracked as DriftingCloud exploited the flaw since early March. Remember, it was announced on March 25th and there was a fix, but these attacks happened in early March, so before March 25th. The threat actors used a zero-day exploit to drop a web shell backdoor and target the customer's staff. This particular attack leveraged a zero-day exploit to compromise the customer's firewall. VULNERABILITIES observed the attacker implementing an interesting web shell backdoor, create a secondary form of persistence, and ultimately launch attacks against the customer's staff. These attacks aimed to further breach cloud-hosted web servers hosting the organization's public-facing websites, reads the report published by VULNERABILITIES. This type of attack is rare and difficult to detect. This blog post serves to share what highly targeted organizations are up against and ways to defend against attacks of this nature. VULNERABILITIES discovered the intrusion while investigating suspicious traffic originating from the Sophos Firewall to key systems in its customers' networks. The analysis of the logs revealed significant and repeated suspicious access aimed at a valid JSP file, login.jsp. Further investigation revealed that the threat actors used the Behinder framework, which was employed by other Chinese app groups in attacks exploiting the recently disclosed CVE 2022-26134 flaw in Confluent servers. The compromise of the Sophos flaw was the phase of the attack chain that threat actors later performed man-in-the-middle attacks to collect data and use them to compromise additional systems outside of the network where the firewall resided. Once access is gained to the target web servers, the DriftingCloud APT deployed multiple open-source malware, including Puppy Rat, Pentagana, and Sliver. VULNERABILITIES researchers shared the indicators of compromise for the attacks and Yara rules to detect the attack pattern. F5 Labs researchers spotted a new strain of Android malware named Malabot that is targeting online banking and cryptocurrency wallet customers in Spain and Italy. The experts documented attacks against multiple banks, including Unicredit, Santander, CaixaBank, and Carta BCC. The malware was discovered 2 weeks after an international law enforcement operation dismantled the Fluebot malware. The malware supports a broad range of features, including the ability to steal credentials, cookies, and bypass multi-factor authentication codes. The malicious code also is able to remotely control infected devices using a VNC server implementation. Malabot disguises itself as a cryptocurrency mining app named MiningX or Crypto App. Experts also observe the malicious code masqueraded as My Social Security and Chrome apps. The experts discovered that the command and control server is in Russia, and that the malware used the same servers that were associated with the Salady malware operation. The command and control server is active at least since June of 2020. The malware is a heavily modified reworking of the Sova Android banking Trojan, but supports different functionality and has different targets, command and control servers, domains, and packing schemes. The malware is distributed through malicious websites or via smashing attacks or smishing attacks. Distribution of Malabot is performed by attracting victims to fraudulent websites where they are tricked into downloading the malware, or by directly sending SMS phishing messages to mobile phone numbers, reads the advisory published by F5 Labs. Like other banking Trojans, Malabot abuses the accessibility service to implement a VNC-like functionality using the accessibility API. It grabs information from screens, and it can populate bus object which saves devices' states. Malabot listens to for events using the accessibility service. If it detects that the victim has opened an app on the list of targets, it'll set up a web view that displays an HTML overlay to the victim. Continues the report. Malabot abuses the access to the accessibility API to bypass Google's two-factor authentication methods. Malabot is most obviously a threat to customers of Spanish and Italian banks, but we can expect a broader range of targets to be added to the app as time goes on. In addition, the versatility of the malware and the control it gives attackers over the device mean that it could, in principle, be used for a wider range of attacks than stealing credentials and cryptocurrency, concludes the report. In fact, any application which makes use of WebView is liable to have the user's credentials and cookies stolen. Bleepy Computer and Malware Hunter team researchers citing user reports and sample submissions on the ID ransomware platform warn of a new wave of EchoRakes ransomware attacks targeting QNAP network-attached storage devices. The ransomware tracked as Integer as QNAP Crypt, and EchoRakes by Anomaly, is written in the Go programming language and uses AES encryption to encrypt files. The malicious code appends .encrypt extension to file names of encrypted files. In August 2021, another variant of the EchoRakes ransomware started infecting network-attached storage devices from Taiwanese vendors QNAP and Synology. In May 2021, QNAP warned customers of threat actors that are targeting its NAS devices with EchoRakes ransomware attacks and exploiting a Rune Server Zero-Day vulnerability. The Taiwanese vendor was informed of ongoing EchoRakes ransomware attacks that infected QNAP NAS devices using weak passwords. Independent experts observed a surge in EchoRakes infection reports between April 19th and April 26, 2021. Now the experts observed a surge in the number of submissions to the ID ransomware service, and many users reported EchoRakes infections in the Bleepy Computer forums. Although only a few dozen EchoRakes samples have been submitted, the actual numbers of successful attacks is most likely higher, since only some of the victims will use the ID ransomware service to identify the ransomware that encrypted their devices. In May, the company issued the alert in response to a new wave of deadbolt ransomware attacks targeting NAS devices using QTS 4.3.6 and QTS 4.4.1. The Taiwanese vendor asked users to install the latest update on their NAS devices and avoid exposing them on the internet. QNAP Systems Incorporated recently detected a new attack by the Deadbolt ransomware. According to the investigation by the QNAP Product Security Incident Response Team, the attack targeted NAS devices using QTS 4.3.6 and QTS 4.4.1, and the affected models were mainly TS-X51 series and TS-X53 series, reads the advisory published by the company. QNAP urges all NAS users to check and update QTS to the latest version as soon as possible and avoid exposing their NAS to the internet. Since January, Deadbolt ransomware operators are targeting QNAP NAS devices worldwide. Its operators claim the availability of a zero-day exploit that allows them to encrypt the content of the infected systems. In the middle of June, the WordPress threat intelligence team noticed a backported security update in the popular WordPress plugin Ninja Forms. which has over 1 million active installations. The analysis of the updates revealed that they patched a code injection vulnerability that an unauthenticated attacker can exploit to execute arbitrary code to delete arbitrary files on the websites where a separate pop chain was present. The researchers believe that this vulnerability is being actively exploited in the wild. It's been rated with a CVS score of 9.8. Ninja Forms is a drag-and-drop form builder plugin for WordPress Builder that allows users to easily create complex forms within just a few minutes. The vulnerability resides in the merge tag feature of the plugin. One feature of Ninja Forms is the ability to add merge tags to forms that will auto-populate values from other areas of WordPress like post IDs and logged in users' names. Unfortunately, this functionality had a flaw that made it possible to call various Ninja Form classes that could be used for a wide range of exploits targeting vulnerable WordPress sites, reads the advisory published by WordFence. Without providing too many details on the vulnerability, the merge tag functionality does an is_callable check on a supplied merge tags. When a callable class and method is supplied as a merge tag, the function is called and the code executed. These merge tags can be supplied by unauthenticated users due to the way nf_merge tags_other class handles merge tags. WordFence determined that this could lead to a variety of exploit chains due to the various classes and functions that the Ninja Forms plugin contains. The experts explain that the issue can be abused by a wide range of exploits. One of the potentially critical exploit chain described by the researchers involves the use of the nf_admin_processes_import form class to achieve remote code execution via deserialization. We now move on to other security news. The U.S. Department of Justice announced to have shut down the infrastructure associated with the Russian botnet RSOCKS as part of an international police operation that involved law enforcement partners from Germany, the Netherlands, and the UK. The RSOCKS was composed of millions of compromised computers and other electronic devices around the world, including industrial control systems, time clocks, routers, audio-video streaming devices, and smart garage door openers. The U.S. Department of Justice, together with law enforcement partners in Germany, the Netherlands, and the United Kingdom, have dismantled the infrastructure of a Russian botnet known as RSOCKS, which hacked millions of computers and other electronic devices around the world, reads the announcement published by the DOJ. The experts added that the RSOCKS botnet expanded into compromising additional types of devices, including Android devices and conventional computers. The RSOCKS botnet compromised millions of devices throughout the world, said U.S. Attorney Randy Grossman. Cybercriminals will not escape justice regardless of where they operate. Working with public and private partners around the globe, we'll relentlessly pursue them while using all the tools at our disposal to disrupt their threats and prosecute those responsible. Grossman thanks the prosecution team, the FBI, and the Department of Justice Criminal Division's Computer Crimes and Intellectual Property Section for their excellent work on this case. The operations behind the RSOCKS botnet offer their clients access to IP addresses assigned to devices that have been compromised to route internet traffic. Clients of the RSOCKS botnet could pay a fee to its operators by using a web browser to navigate to a web-based storefront, i.e. a public website that allows users to purchase access to the botnet, which allow them to rent access to a pool of proxies for a specified period of time, i.e. 1 day, 1 week, or 1 month. The cost for access to a pool of RSOCKS proxies range from $30 per day for access to 2,000 proxies to $200 per day for access to 90,000 proxies. Once a pool of proxies has been purchased, threat actors could redirect malicious internet traffic through the IP addresses associated with the compromised devices and carry out a broad range of malicious activities, including credential stuffing attacks, accessing compromised social media accounts, and sending out phishing messages. The investigation into the botnet revealed that its operators compromised several large public and private entities, including a university, a hotel, a television studio, and an electronics manufacturer, along with home businesses and individuals. As alleged in the unsealed warrant, FBI investigators used undercover purchases to obtain access to the RSOCKS botnet in order to identify its back-end infrastructure and its victims. The initial undercover purchase in early 2017 identified approximately 325,000 compromised victim devices throughout the world, with numerous devices located within San Diego County, continues the DOJ. With that, I say thanks again for watching. Don't forget to share and subscribe if you haven't already, and smash the bell if you haven't already, and I'll see you on the next episode. Take care.